My name is Near.
And my name is Cora.
And you're watching Anime TV. How's it going, everybody? This is Anime TV. If you're wondering exactly what the show is, I mean, I would hope so. It is episode 1. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to explain it to you, because that's what I'm here for.
Yes, please explain.
So, Cora and I are the anime connoisseurs of the Super Cool Nerd Network here. We talk about it. We love it. All of our friends are really annoyed by the fact that we won't stop talking about it, so we needed another outlet. So we created Anime TV. Anime TV will be a anime reviewing talk show where every 2 weeks, Cora and I will take a look at a different anime. We're going to dissect it. We're going to talk about it. Talk about our thoughts, our feelings. So every single week, we're going to take a look at it. We're going to talk about its soundtrack. We're going to talk about its animation, its characters, its story, and its voice acting. There's just so much anime out there. I mean, you take a look through Funimation and Crunchyroll and Netflix and Hulu, and you ever just not know what to watch? Well, that's why we're here. We're here to help you. We're going to tell you whether it sucks. We're going to tell you if you love it.
And just remember that these are our opinions. If this is a show that you like or a show that you may hate that we like, just remember these are our opinions, and we're going to try and look at it from a very neutral standpoint, but we are, in the end, going to have our own views of the show.
That being said, we do care about your opinions. So at the end of every episode, we're going to tell you exactly what anime we'll be watching next. So feel free down in the comments to put down your review of the anime we'll be watching. We will pick 2 comments and read them on the show. Mm-hmm. That way you don't get just our opinions, because I wouldn't trust our opinions at all. This way you get to listen to other people's opinions on exactly what we're going to do.
That's right.
So with that, we're going to watch some anime.
Yay!
Attention, all sports fans. I'm going to start calling everybody sports fans now, because I like sports. Well, for years, my friends and family have been trying to get me to watch sports. I just won't do it. They've been trying to get me to watch soccer, baseball, basketball, but none more than football. I, personally, just don't care about sports. And I can't sit down and start watching something if I don't know the rules to it. So I do what I always do when I want to learn about something while entertaining myself at the same time, and that's by watching anime.
And that's where I stepped in.
That's why this topic for this week's episode is we took a look at Eyeshield 21.
Running back. Eyeshield 21.
Eyeshield 21 is the only American football anime that exists. I've looked. If I'm wrong, please tell me in the comments, because I want to check it out too. But it's not a very popular sport in Japan.
No. I mean, that's the whole difference between, that's why it's called like football and you have American football, because a lot of other sports call football, well, soccer.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, however you want to put it. It's because in America we have just football. It's so huge here. Everybody talks about football. All my friends go crazy over it. My dad was the world's biggest football player, so I just didn't watch it the same way. And then you recommended that we take a look at Eyeshield, and I started watching it, and yeah, I like it. It's fun. It's definitely fun.
Sports anime is definitely how people should get into sports, because it's a nice, gentle, push in there. So most of them talk about the rules. That way, when you watch an actual sport of it, you kind of know what's going on a little bit.
That was one of the things that I really liked about Eyeshield is in the middle of the middle episode. So different animes will come in and they'll do you're watching this, and they'll have a little clip of the theme song that they did for that season or something like that. But this one, they introduced Football Clinic, and it would sit there and it would be so tell us more about this. What's this question? It reminded me a lot of Pokemon's Who's That Pokemon? Yeah. Where instead of doing the basic stuff, but then it was a question by Mamori. I think that's how you say it.
Mamori.
Mamori. Redhead girl. And yeah, she would come in, and then the little devil would come in and tell you the answer. So I got to learn a little bit more about certain parts of the sport. like I said, I don't watch a lot of sports, so for the longest time, I honestly thought each touchdown was 7 points. and not 6 points. So I didn't learn that until like this last year, where one of my friends had to explain that to me. They got to explain it where they're like, yeah, each person, every touchdown is 6 points, and then you get a shot to make another goal, which allows you to be, make it either 1 point or 2 points, depending on if you kicked it in or if you ran it in. I was like, okay, well, that's actually really interesting to know. I wouldn't have known that, and I didn't know that. So I got to learn a little bit thanks to this.
Yeah, the football clinic was introduced also because, like with baseball and soccer, most of the Japanese populace kind of already know the rules to a degree, so they kind of gloss over the rules depending on the show. With American football, it's become more popular in Japan because of Eyeshield. So this was a good way for people who'd never seen it to kind of get a grasp on the rules, but also the manga itself did that too, where they had different like breakdowns for what the different plays were that the characters were talking about. And that was kind of like an homage to that part.
There's a difference between I didn't read the manga since I just started watching the anime, but there were definitely parts in the show that, me getting as far as I got, where I could definitely see where it got influenced from the manga. Where something like, well, I'll just talk about the big game that they fought with the Ojo White Knights.
Yes,
that very first game they had. They had the reporter who was sitting there and asking a bunch of questions because she didn't know. She was like, okay, what's a huddle? Okay, well, they keep talking about like the certain down. What's this? And she kept asking multiple questions.
Yeah.
But I also hated that she did that. Like, that makes sense in like a manga where you wouldn't have the football clinic. But as of that point, we were already like 6 episodes in. So I had already had 6 football clinics where I was learning the rules. And some of them were already repeated that they had talked about in the football clinic, which was just a huge problem for me because I had already learned that. And I went, okay, well, I don't need you to, I want to know what's happening in this game. Like right now they're putting Shin back in, and I thought this was going to be like a possible win, but it was just very distracting because she just kept asking more and more questions.
Right.
And if she's doing it logically as well, she's the reporter going in there filming this high school game. I think she would know a little bit about the sport, but then she just didn't. And then they just never talk about that character again.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about characters then, since we're talking about the reporter character. Everyone has their favorite characters, but before we get to those, we should probably talk about the main character. You have Sena Kobayashi, and he is not a typical sports anime character. Sports anime has a trope, for those who don't really watch it very much, that the main character is like, I'm the best, and I will be the best forever, or I want to be the best. Like, they have a drive, regardless, to be the ace, to be the best character on the team, to be the spiker, to be the this, to be the that. Senna isn't that. Senna doesn't want to play football. He wants, at the very minimum, to be the manager. So he wants to be the one on the side of the field with the clipboard, taking notes, and he doesn't want to interact on the field at all.
したり、マネージメント全般を受け持つチーム運営の最高責任者。監督、敵チームの弱点を発見しました。何？もう見抜いてしまったというのか。さすがセナ君、クリスマスボールに出られたのも君のおかげだ。
He was one of those characters that in the beginning just wanted to live a normal high school life because he didn't want to be bullied on anymore, just like any other kid. By endeavor. But it was one of those things where, I'm glad you mentioned the character design for Senna. It was, you're right in the aspect of like certain characters, especially sports animes, you have these characters that are almost like super attractive. One example is like Prince of Tennis, where you had like the super attractive kid who just wanted to be like the best at what he was at the best at.
Oh, you mean like every single player on the team was hot?
It was just one of those.
Weird.
It was just one of those things where, because most people that play those sports are just generally in shape, they have like that muscular build. So he didn't have that particular character design. But what he did have was a very 90s character design. He had the type of animation style is definitely going to be like an older anime.
Yes,
it's definitely.
I mean, this was made in the late 90s, early 2000s.
It has that kind of graininess to it where it still had that color and shading, but it wasn't the same way that, like if you compare Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Super, it's two different types of animation style based off time. But so based off those times, a lot of those main characters were scrawnier. They were smaller because everybody was trying to relate to those characters. So like you had Naruto, who was like super tiny, and then you had things like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you had Yugi, who was super tiny, but then when he decided to be really cool, he was like the big pharaoh and awesome. And so Senna stayed that way the entire time because he's just this tiny kid who knows how to run, and just like his character development, just from what I saw, changed so drastically within the first like 10 episodes.
Yes,
it was just so quick, and I didn't get so far into Eyeshield 21 because of just time and stuff that we have outside. But just within the amount of time, I'm sitting here going, man, there's like 90 episodes to this show, and if he's already had this much character development, I don't know where else they're going to go from there.
Well, the original run for the manga was 330 chapters, so it was like 30 manga.
It's a pretty decent amount.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was a pretty good run. They actually weren't sure if it was going to be a successful run. They had all kinds of different like ideas that they could go with if it started failing, but it took off because of the characters. That was one of the reasons. And Senna being a relatable character was part of it. Because like, how many people think, I want to play football? And then... But then
jocks jocks at our schools, but like when I graduated, I'm a big guy now, but when I graduated high school, I was super skinny. I was actually short. I had a growth spurt. It was just one of those things where I wasn't the type of person that you would expect to play football.
Yeah.
So being that type of person, I didn't see myself playing that type of game. So looking at Senna, kind of understanding, look, I don't want to get tackled. I don't want to be bullied. But it was just, okay, I get where he's coming from. And then all of a sudden he finds he has this talent that he could actually use. And he goes from wanting to be the manager where he's like, look at all these skills that I could do whenever I'm an adult. And I could put on a resume. I managed a football team to I kind of suck at managing a football team. And then all of a sudden finding out that he has this good ability to play the football game.
Right. And he would never have known that if it weren't for the magic of... the next character, my favorite character, and the trash can boy, Hiruma.
一人捕まえたぞこいつはすごいランニングバックだセナ君
He's a trash can. I love him.
Actually liked him a lot more than I thought I was going to.
He grows on you. He is a character, like, he blackmails people to join the football team. And he's very good at it. He has a journal that he uses and has secrets on everyone. For Senna, he just basically bombarded him and bullied him into joining. Which is
when I first started watching this, is the first thing I told you was I started texting you and I was like, hold on, you mean to tell me that he nicely bullied him into joining the club?
Yep.
It was just like he showed up, Senna shows up to the school, and you know, you've got Hiruma, and it's what, Kuruda, I think is what it is. Or Kuruda.
Kurita.
Yeah, and they show up and they're like, yay, you made it in, way to go. And then they just start like harassing him into joining the football team because no one will join this football team. He gets home and like all of the fax machine, like his fax machine is just going off with all of
his mailbox
these.
is stuffed with flyers.
It's just hilarious. I'm like, okay, well, they're just kind of telling him, hey, you should join the football team. But like they're just going after anyone because of the fact that this isn't going off. And I thought, okay, well, this character looks a little weird, but, you know, he hasn't done anything mean. And, like, his mean attempts aren't mean. They're just considered bully-like because of the way that school is operated. But even then, his bully actions aren't nearly as bad as the actual bullies that he was bullied with.
I mean, he also pulls out guns.
No one talks about that.
No, like, Hiruma's thing, y'all, is he pulls guns out of hammer space, and literally no one questions it except, like, Senna. He's like, why does he have a bazooka? Why is this a thing? And nobody else questions it.
There, in the actual game that I watched with the Ojo White Knights, he actually pulls out pistols and he's just shooting them in the air every time, and then points them at people. And everyone in the stands just doesn't care. And I mean, I guess it's like a product of just, you know, comedic humor.
Yeah.
But you have to think of it just anywhere else. It's like if you put that comedic humor in a manga now, it's not going to do so well with the way that the country's going. But I mean, still going back then, where it's just like, okay, this was made 20 years ago.
Yeah,
it was really funny.
And honestly, in context, it is kind of funny, especially instead of having a starter's pistol to get Senna to run to calculate his time, he uses a rocket launcher.
It was one of those things where they don't use the guns in a way that's, I guess, threatening.
Malicious.
Yeah, there was no malicious intent. It's just for comedic effect. and it like briefly comes up in certain things, and then it just doesn't come up again. For example, like when Memori shows up and decides she's going to clean the entire football shack, which, by the way, is not big enough to hold the amount of players necessary. Then she just opens up a locker and like a giant avalanche of guns comes out. And all I'm thinking is that's just so many guns that they didn't even detail the guns anymore. It was just a gray blob that somebody put like little designs on. Like the animation styling, I know that we were talking about characters, but we're moving a little bit into animation. The animation is just, it screams 90s.
It really does. And did it look familiar to you?
A little, yeah. Yeah, it does.
That is because the illustrator is Yusuke Murata, which, if that name is familiar, it is the One Punch Man artist.
I mean, that's a fun history on its own, just with being One Punch Man and how that started. We'll get to him eventually one day.
Yeah.
But it like that art style in particular, it stands out. Like all of the background characters look like background characters, but anyone else that's in the actual show looks like just a character that stands out. Like Senna, it doesn't look particularly like standout-ish, just more relatable. But I made this joke earlier where you could color his hair different colors and he would look like Yugi.
Really could.
And just because like the body size, and then you have Hiruma, who's just got this super spiked up hair, which was really popular because that was the time with like Dragon Ball and stuff like that.
Yeah, and of course, like the elf ears and fangs.
Just all sorts of things. And then
he looks like a devil.
Then there's my favorite character, which is Karuta, who's just this really, really big guy. And he's got the super simple smiley face on him. He's just like the super sweetest character. And
君は何しばこの豚まん野郎ブロッカーを押すときはね、手の底で相手の脇を押し上げるように
I call him Chestnut Boy because his head is like a chestnut, and I think they like nicknamed him something with chestnut in it.
I hadn't gotten that far, but when they talk to him, they just keep talking about, like, they just mention his name. But there are so many characters that stand out. Like when they're fighting the Ojo White Knights, they have the other really big guy that's there, and it looks just like him, but then they put way more detail into it, and it's like I said, it looks very retro 90s because of the fact that he's big, he's bulky, but at the same time, he just doesn't look well proportioned. He's just overly big and bulky because of that.
But it works at the same time. Like, also, the animation itself is really smooth.
It is.
It moves very fluidly. The camera angles work really well. My favorite thing is, it's in the first episode where Senna is showing off his power. Kind of. I say showing off his power, but we're being shown his power.
His analytical ability, if you will.
Yeah. His ability to move and dodge, and his ability to see where he needs to move. How they showed, like, they basically just showed a still shot of this giant crowd and the arrow moving through, and then showed him going through it in that same motion. It was beautifully done.
Oh, yeah. It was one of those things where they showed me that immediately, and the first thing I thought of was just, okay, well, I now know that he's got this, like, super high-level intelligence of, like, analytics where he's like, okay, well, this is where they're moving. Like, he has a huge amount of the ability to predict someone's movements, which made him really amazing. But at the same time, I was thinking, well, that's going to get kind of old really quick. But then immediately in that second game, they show that Shin is just as good, if not better, and instantly just keeps taking him down over and over, where that just didn't help because you can't account for everything. And I laughed. Now I felt bad. I was like, okay, you got to beat this guy. Like, this is something. Like, this guy, I don't hate this character at all, but like, come on, you got to do something. Stop whining. And then within the course of that, like 3-4 episodes, he just went from being like, I'm so like, oh, I'm on top of the world, to now I'm really scared. I don't want to get hurt. I'm running away, to I'm back at it. And then just keeps going back up. So like the drive is there, and I just couldn't help but think, I was like, man, this is really interesting, because I went from being like, okay, I'll get to another episode later. I'll do it later. Okay, I'm like 3 episodes in, I'll do it later, to the point where like over the weekend I was just like, okay, gotta find out how this game ends. We gotta keep on going. I need to know. I'm gonna skip over these people talking. I don't know. I just want to watch the game, and like it drew me in the way that it was, the storytelling was done.
Yes,
and I really enjoyed that.
I really like the story, and I think it's because, like, I don't like football. I say that I've seen football. It's okay.
I get the
But
appeal.
I see the appeal, but the thing to keep me in, and this is one of the reasons I really like sports anime, is characters and their arcs. Senna's arc, everyone has an interesting arc. Like, Senna always has an interesting arc. Hiruma is just Hiruma. I mean, he has an arc, but it's also Hiruma, so of course I'm going to like it. But, like, watching the team come together as a team from people who are from different sports is incredible. Because it's all these people that are from different sports teams that have joined the football team, kind of based on Hiruma. Some of them. Senna recruits one. Honestly.
He recruits the guy from the track team.
Yeah, he recruits one person, honestly, and then Hiruma recruits like 20 people that he's like blackmailed.
Yeah, it was the goal was to get 11.
Let's not tell everyone. Let's not tell everything. There's a game where they have to find people, or Hiruma will punish them, and it's great. And I don't want to spoil that whole adventure because it's so magical.
There were a lot of decent emotion like jerkers where you're kind of sitting there and thinking, okay, this is something that I could definitely get behind, and I can feel the struggle that they're feeling here, and that comes across really well with the characters and the voice acting. Now, I know we said we would talk about voice acting, but it's really hard for us to talk about voice acting when it's subbed.
Yeah.
In this case, we don't have the names of every Japanese voice actor memorized. It's just not something that we do so well with, as opposed to like Funimation here where it's all dubbed.
Right.
And that's something we'll probably talk about in the next episode more. But it's one of those things where even then I could still feel emotion coming from them.
Yeah.
It just hearing the yaha coming from Hiruma was just always hilarious because it was just so iconic to him. And it was one of those things where they didn't focus on catchphrases. Like a lot of shows like to focus on catchphrases, and it depends on what show you're watching. Like they do that in Naruto, but only in the dub, and it's a whole other topic. But it's one of those things where they didn't focus on it, but he just starts screaming yaha. So there's a news article where you can clearly tell it wasn't him, and it's just you hear it yaha at the end, and I giggled because I knew exactly who they were talking about and exactly why.
Yep. Like, I love him so much. And like, one of the reasons there is a dub for like a few episodes, but it wasn't very popular over here. Despite being pushed by the American Football Association, it was not very popular.
We have a different demographic. Everybody in Japan is watching anime and watching their type of sports, and anime is a little bit more popular in Japan, and it started coming over into America, which allowed it to become popular with different kinds of people as well. But while it's not an exception to everybody or the general rule, like me and you, we just don't like sports.
Yeah.
But like sports animes seem to be a little bit more fun to watch because we care about story. That's what our big thing is. So I can sit there and with my friends and have fun and talk about football, and like I've watched the last 2 Super Bowls and kind of understood what was happening. It was just, but I would rather sit there and watch an actual story unfold in front of me. So when you bring it over here, people over here already know about football. So most of the people that are just like, I don't care, I'd just rather watch football.
Yeah, and admittedly, so there's a sliding scale of realism with sports anime. Eyeshield is in the middle of batshit crazy and more realistic. Like, things about it were based off of football. The creator didn't know how to play football, and he came over to America and watched a lot of football games, both college football games and professional football games, to learn the sport. So it's not exactly realistic. And I mean, there are crazy things that happen, like Hiruma going out on the field in an iron lung because Eyeshield.
That's the thing, is that that breach of it's anime. Anime does what anime does. You don't focus too much on realism. There's a concept behind just having like the effect lines, making things seem more dramatic than they are.
Yeah.
Like if I sit down and I draw just the little effect lines on everything, and it's something as simple as, look, the water is dripping, then it's gonna look more dramatic than if I put a camera up on my water glass and you just see a water droplet go down. So there's the difference, because some people find dramatization in anime a little different. So people who are watching football, the drama's already there because they're invested. But then you have people like us where we're watching football and don't see the drama. Instead, it's told to us.
Yeah.
And the way that it's done is done really well. There's a saying in manga where if you come in and you try to force an audience to feel something, they're going to be unhappy because you're forcing that emotion. But if you do the storytelling and you do the backgrounds and you do the soundtrack well and you do everything in the back, it's gonna come together a lot better. Where if I want to feel sad, I'm gonna feel sad. I want to feel happy, I'm gonna be happy. Like, I'm gonna laugh at certain points. I'm gonna sit there on the edge of my seat wondering how this game's gonna end because of the way that they tell the storytelling a little bit more. It just changes based off what you're wanting to watch.
That's true. And like you were talking about the soundtrack, the soundtrack for Eyeshield, I'm going to talk about both like the music and sound effects are really good. Like,
they're phenomenal.
Like the sound effects are very 90s-esque, very retro anime-esque. Like the catching of the football, like I'm sure you can just kind of hear it if you watched a lot of anime. I will
say that the background noises, like the background soundtrack that you will, not like the actual music, but the music that helps with the tone, didn't stand out to me. It was one of those things where, honestly, if I think back, I don't remember much of it because it just didn't, it wasn't there. Most of the time that storytelling can help, that soundtrack can help with storytelling. There's a lot of great animes, like especially in shonen animes, where you have that really awesome action soundtrack going on the back. But this one, it had it did. It just didn't stand out to me, and I think that hurt a little bit as well because I'm not going to sit there on my free time and try to draw or something and then decide to type in Eyeshield 21 soundtrack. It's just not going to pop up. It's not something I'm going to look for. That said, the opening and the ending were great.
The opening and ending, especially for the first season, are fantastic. They may not get you like pumped to work out or anything like some other animes do.
Oh, I know a few.
But it's a good one for cool down kind of stuff. Like it's one you listen to when you're just in the mood for something to perk you up, to make you feel better. On
a walk, all of a sudden that song just pops up into your head and it starts playing. It's going to be that one where I'm going to feel really tranquil and it's there, it's nice, it's catchy. Yeah. I don't think we're going to ever probably tackle this one, but there's a spin-off anime for Dragon Ball Heroes. That particular opening isn't anything to go home about, but it's amusing and that pops up in my head every so often. This is the same thing. It pops up into my head, not when I'm feeling like, oh, I want to get pumped up, but just like, that was a nice little song. It's enjoyable. It's not the best thing I've ever heard, but that was the better part of the music inside of that show, while like the soundtrack on the background just doesn't stand out.
Yeah. And you know what? That's fine. They Eyeshield has that balance of, while the soundtrack may not be anything to write home about, they make up for it with their characters and with their animation and with the story. Like, they make up for it in other areas.
So overall, what do we think of the final review on the soundtrack?
Soundtrack,
it's okay.
Barring the one opening, it's like,
Then before we ask about final review on characters, I want to hear your thoughts on your favorite character, Momori.
セナなんて虚弱で貧弱で脆弱で最弱なんだから。そこまで言わなくても。
Such a sweet girl, so cute, adorable.
Okay, I have nothing wrong with her physical character. I think that they did a really good job designing her. I have problems with her as a character and her personality. I feel like she's a really overbearing character. She suffers from the 90s main female character trope thing, where she's overbearing to the point that you kind of want to punch her.
She's a childhood friend that cares about it, and this is something that I thought was unique, was the fact that even though she's a childhood friend, she's clearly an older childhood friend.
Yeah.
She's an older grade. When they show that they're younger, she's clearly taller. She's able to pick on the people that are picking on him, kind of deal. It's one of those things where that's started to be shown more in animes and even American TV shows now. Just not so much back then. If it was a childhood friend, you were the same age, you grew up together, you were next door neighbors. That's the way that childhood friends worked. So being in the late 90s, having someone that was older, I always thought was interesting. But you were right. She was a little too overprotective. Like, I could see that she's one of the love interests. That's as clear as day. She's supposed to be the love interest for Senna. But the problem that I had with her wasn't the fact that she was overprotective. There's a lot of animes that have overprotective females or vice versa because they're wanting to protect the person that they love without even realizing they love someone. It's just, that's the way some romance stuff goes.
Yeah.
But in this case, she did it to the point where it was almost embarrassing.
Yeah.
for him.
And she didn't take that into consideration or care.
Like,
I'm reminded a lot of Keiko from Yu Yu Hakusho. She was a character that was very overbearing and very protective of Yusuke, but she didn't try to stop him from doing things. Like, yeah, to a point she did, but she didn't, like, physically make him not do something. Like, she didn't, like, blame others for Yusuke's problems. She didn't, like... She freaked out when she found out he joined the football team.
oh yeah,
And then tried to make him quit to join a club she was in so she could protect him.
like there was one of the I believe
No.
the same example that we're talking about is when he's hiding that he's Eyeshield 21.
Yes.
He's that they don't want anyone to know, that different reasons. They haven't really gone into it other than the fact that they don't want other clubs to steal it from them.
Yeah.
But and it was one of those classic like miscommunication things. Like they bring him back, and for some reason Senna decides to cover himself in dirt to make it look like he got beat up, and she freaks out, yells at everybody, and like Hiruma's just calm the whole time because he knows he hasn't done anything wrong. So, but he's just going ahead and letting it play out the way it was supposed to. And she freaks out, yells at them, grabs Senna by the hand and says, "You're quitting this club. We're going to go join you and find you a better club." Walks away. And I was like, that's kind of embarrassing. Well, yeah, he's a freshman, and I can see that you think that he just got beat up or something like that. Like, the kid's going to make his own decisions.
Yeah, like...
It was overprotective. And then just to find out when he says, yeah, I'm going to keep staying in the football club, then she shows up the next day, and she's like, well, I'm just going to hang out here with you, and we're going to clean this out until you decide to otherwise. And then Hiruma's like, you know what? She's really good at manager skills, so I'll go ahead and convince her to join. And that was different when she decided to join, but her reasons for joining were different.
Right, and that's one of the reasons that I don't like her. And I'm sure, like, because I haven't completely finished the anime, and I'm sure she has an arc where she gets over that. But at the beginning, it's so irritating. And normally, like with sports anime, you have that female love interest, and either they'll do something or they'll just kind of be there in the background and you can ignore them. And in this case, it's you should be, like, I feel like you should be in the background and I should be able to ignore you, but you keep coming into the forefront, and I'm not a fan.
I know there's supposed to be another female character, and I haven't seen her yet from how far I got, that looks adorable, but like, there's so many other characters. So for my final review on characters, I'm kind of split. I'm 50-50 on them. There's a lot of characters that I really like, and there's a lot of characters that I don't. Like, I like Senna, obviously. Hiruma's really funny. I really like Kuruta because he's just this giant teddy bear. But then, like, Momori, I'm indifferent about her. Then there's some characters on, like, the opposing team. Like, so far I got introduced to Rocky, and I haven't met enough of him to form an opinion.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of characters that I feel like have a lot of potential, and then there's a lot of characters that I just don't care about. So I'm split on characters, but at the same way, it still felt like a high school where everybody was a different personality, everyone had their own thing. So I could get behind it, but I haven't met enough main characters that have driven me to not want to watch it anymore.
Yeah, and see, like, I really love the characters. Even though I may not like Memori a lot, I do like her character because it, I guess, keeps things interesting, and that can be used for plot devices down the road. But, like, I also just, like, I love the different characters that they go up against. Because one of the things that you'll notice is, like, you'll have a team called, like, the Cupids, for example. And every single member of the football team is dating one of the cheerleaders for their team. And they're just so desperately in love, and they play up that stereotype beautifully. And you have the White Knights, and they're all power players. They're all strong.
That was part of my thing about those characters being 50-50, because we got introduced to Ojo, and you had Shin, and you had like the really big dumb brute, and I was like, some of these characters are great. I don't care so much about the other ones. And then you have characters that are going through their own existential crisis, like the celebrity, who I just didn't care about because I didn't know him. And then all of a sudden you just introduce like a bunch of fangirls that are freaking out about him, and I just thought that was super annoying. Like, I get it. I never went to school with a celebrity, but it was the same time. It was just kind of, if you see someone around enough, the factor eventually just kind of fades away and they just become a person in your eyes. But so that's why I was kind of split on characters. So for me, it's not my driving factor.
Right. I'm a big person with characters and like character designs and how they present them. And I love the idea that they're gonna take like whatever the team name is and stereotype the crap out of it for them to go against them. Like, I love that. whether it's in their design or whether it's in their personalities, that's how they play it. The Devil Bats are a little different because they're the main team, so they're going to be a little different there.
I actually don't know if that's true. The Devil Bats were all assorted, and they're one of those characters that had the most changes to them, I guess you could say. They were the most drastically differently drawn, animated style characters.
Well, that's what I mean.
So it kind of fit, in my opinion, where the way they acted, especially if you have Hiruma as the main.
Oh, you know, Hiruma being like the literal devil of the team. Like, you don't need a whole team of Devil Bats because you have all of it centered on one character, and it works. But, actually, a fun story with character designs. He based the football attire for the Devil Bats off of an American football team. Oh, which team was it? Crap, I've already forgotten. No.
Right. Yeah, that was one of my things about those characters, where I didn't even see that kind of trend until like got past the Ojo White Knights, and I went, man, these guys are like hanging out inside of like a cathedral, working out. The lights are dim. They're pumping like 140. Like, I have a buddy that does just that, and I just sit there with my, overweight self and just kind of go, all right, maybe if I find a cathedral church just like that, I'll pump some iron. But like the storytelling was really well done. Yeah. It definitely got me interested. I don't think it's going to be an anime that I'm going to sit here and go, you know what I want to watch today? Let me rewatch this anime. It's not going to be one of those for me, but it's going to be one of those that maybe down the line, I'll remember that anime exists, and I'll sit down and I'll continue to watch it and probably get like 5 episodes in and then forget about it again. Like, it's not a bad anime by any means.
Yeah.
I think it's going to appeal to a decent audience. I think it's going to, it didn't do so well here in America, but I think that's just because certain people didn't give it a chance.
Right.
It's one of those things where I hate sports, but I enjoyed this anime. So I would recommend to at least check it out.
Yes, absolutely. Also, Philadelphia Eagles. That's who their designs were based on. There we go. Research, kids.
So overall, what's your final opinion on Eyeshield?
I honestly would give it a solid 7 out of 10. Like, it's honestly one of my absolute favorite animes, but I also really like sports anime a lot.
See, and I haven't watched a whole lot of sports anime, so for me, I have a little bit of a lower rating. Not that we do ratings, but if we were to do it out of 10, I would give it a 5. That could be influenced by the fact that I'm just not as far into it as you are, and I haven't met as many characters and haven't gotten as many background arcs and stuff like that. But like I said, it's enjoyable enough for me to want to watch it, just not enjoyable enough for me to want to probably go out and own it.
Right, and I've actively been looking for it at conventions and stuff because I want to own it.
I mean, you bought this thing.
I did. I did buy this pencil bag. Literally, impulse buy. I saw it on a table, and the first thing I do is I need this, and I need the keychain that you have that goes with it.
That's why we can't take you shopping anyway.
Nope.
But I think that's really all we have for anime TV. Like I said, I hope you like our opinions. I hope you like other people's opinions as well. We look forward to listening to your opinions, hence why next week we're going to be taking a look at Gurren Lagann.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Pierce the heavens.
So go ahead and put down your comment and sound. Give us your reviews down in the comment section, and we will pick 1, maybe 2 people, and we'll read them on our next show as well, depending on how well that is. We do intend to do that pretty regularly. You can check us out individually.
You can find me on Instagram at Korodono, Korodono, or Twitter at Hotspurch.
And I'm going to be at the Near Plasma on Instagram and Twitter. You can also follow the actual main show's Instagram page, which is at Anime TV Cast. And then you can, of course, follow Super Cool Nerd Show, as we were part of that network.
Yep, and we will be posting stuff on our page as well, so be sure to check it out.
Yeah, so we'll be back in 2 weeks. We hope you enjoyed it, and keep watching anime.
Yep, and as always, keep on nerding.
I'm going to go with anime.
Oh, okay, that's right.